Hello, welcome back, gang. I hope this week has treated you well, and in case you don't know, this is the place where I talk to you about true crime, bite-sized though, in just 10 minutes. Each week I stick a 10-minute timer on the clock and give you as much as physically possible, and today I think I've got my work cut out for me. It's a man that has been pretty highly requested across my social media channels. People have asked on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter, and the time has come. We are dipping once again, for the second time ever, into the murky water of cults, and a man whose intention, it's been said, was to start a race war. Fun. If you like my content, enjoy what I do, make sure you're subscribing. We are on the road to 5k, and actually we're getting there. So yeah, subscribe, like, comment, share this video with your mates. It really makes a huge difference. Back to the issue at hand. Although he wasn't physically present at the murders he was convicted for, it was this week in 1971 that he was sentenced to death. Today, my friends, we are gonna talk about Charles Manson. Welcome to the anniversary. Shwa-na-na-na, 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 shwa-na-na-na. It was this week, April 19th, 1971, that Charles Manson was sentenced to death for his part in the Tate Bianca murders, those extremely famous deaths. And in order to talk to you about those and every other insane thing that he did, we have to take it all the way back to the beginning. Charles Manson, before the infamous swastika tattoo thing in the middle of his head and his obsession with the Beatles, was born in November of 1934 in Cincinnati to a 16-year-old mom who struggled with alcohol. She was a sex worker, and it wasn't a super stable upbringing for a young Charles. He spent a lot of his childhood being passed between family members, in and out of the church as well, and in home away schools, which I think is a bit like foster care. And he kept running away, going back to his mum. She didn't want him. She'd be like, nah, go back to the home, and it just wasn't stable at all. He ended up on the streets committing crime at a really young age, car theft, armed robberies, and for the next 20 years he was literally hokey-cokeying out of prison. First going when he was about 15 or 16. He got really into music during his time in prison, and when it came time for him to leave at the age of 32, he had spent pretty much half of his life behind bars. He even wanted to stay in jail because he was just institutionalized, but no, Charles, you have to go, get out of here and live your life, you 32-year-old man. He was released in 1967. He did a lot with his life before starting the Manson family cult. He was a Scientologist for a bit, but that was even too much for Mr. Charles. He got married, but Rosalie left him with his kids as well. Eventually, he decided that what was missing with his life was a family. Growing up, he had never had one, so he decided to make one of his own in California. He pretty much preyed on the vulnerable and misfit type of person. And of course, it's a cult, so we have to have a super intelligent, charismatic leader. And Charles Manson fit right into that slot. He bought a ranch and had about 100 people living there, but there were strict rules if you wanted to join the Manson family. There were no books, no watches, I'm out, no clocks, no calendars, no glasses. If you were nearsighted, you could not be part of the Charles Manson family. They hated Hollywood and fame and money and society, and Charles Manson wanted no distractions from family life. There are loads of films, TV shows, documentaries, podcasts, books. He may be one of the most documented criminals of our time, and he would play guitar round a fire. He would lure girls in, boys in with his alternative lifestyle. The family was a group of around 100 followers, and they shared Manson's passion for an unconventional lifestyle and, of course, a habitual use of hallucinogenic drugs like LSD, magic mushrooms, acid. I don't know if LSD is acid. It might be acid. They eventually moved from San Francisco to a deserted ranch in the San Fernando Valley, which again is not a surprise because cults love a ranch. They love a communal living ranch. But ultimately, our boy Charles wanted to feel loved, and the desperation to turned into control. He was obsessed with the Beatles, mostly their song Helter Skelter. It's way before our time, but hopefully you've heard of the band at least. He believed that the song Helter Skelter spoke to him. And Paul McCartney has said that the playground slide in Helter Skelter was a metaphor for the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. But Manson took it a little bit differently. He interpreted the lyrics a little bit differently. differently. And he thought of it as an incitation to bring a race war. And he turned to the album and lyrics to justify the scheme and guide his followers to murder. He was a little bit apocalyptic, but you know, it's a cult, so why wouldn't he be? He had a strong belief and interest in the notion of Armageddon from the Book of Revelations. He also explored the teachings of the Church of Final Judgment and other culty type things there. Before the famous murder spree, Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, another band from Quebec, had allowed Manson and several members of his family to stay at his home after picking up 2 female members of the family who had been hitchhiking. Random fun fact there. I think Manson actually like auditioned to be in a band and he didn't get in and he was really sad. It's kind of one of those ones where, you know, like, oh, I hate Hollywood and I hate fame, but also you didn't let me in your band. That's not the reason why I hate you. I don't hate fame because you didn't think my guitar strumming was good enough or my vocals weren't silky smooth. By July of 1969, the first of the family murders started beginning. Bobby Beausoleil is how I think you say his name. He killed a man called Gary Hinman, and he was actually a friend of the Charles Manson and the Manson families, but he was tortured for 2 days before being stabbed to death while the family was trying to get him to officially join them and turn over his assets. They wrote "Political Piggy" on the wall in Gary Hinman's blood, but about 2 weeks later, Bobby Beausoleil was actually booked on murder charges. That is not the only murder they committed. Actually, it's thought that the family carried out 35 some murders. Most of their cases, though, were never tried, in part for lack of evidence, but also a lot of them had been sentenced to death and were already lifed up in prison, so maybe there wasn't much point. But it was in August of 1969 that the most famous of the Manson family murders took place. Charles Manson gathered a group of his most loyal followers to carry out a massacre among Hollywood's elite and beautiful people. The first of his victims was murdered at the home that Roman Polanski had rented, located in Benedict Canyon, which is an area just north of Beverly Hills. Polanski was actually away in London shooting a film, but the victims had just returned from dinner at the time of the murder. So while Charles Manson actually didn't take part in this killing, he directed 4 of his most obedient followers, a guy called Charles Tex Watson, Suzanne Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel and Linda Kasabian, to the address and directed them to kill everyone. According to one of the family members' statements, the household had been targeted because it represented the showbiz world that had rejected Manson, because obviously he didn't get into that band that time. They killed a heavily pregnant 26-year-old actress, Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger, Wojciech Frykowski, Jay Sebring, and Stephen Parent. Of course, they wouldn't be the family if they didn't write something on the walls, and in Sharon Tate's blood, they wrote "pig" on the front door. There was a rope around Sharon Tate's neck, one of her breasts was cut off, and there was an X slashed into her stomach. The killings were horrific, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but I've got plenty of links below if you would like pictures, videos. The day after the murders, the Manson family moved on to another home in Los Feliz, claiming the lives of Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. They were the owners of a chain of grocery stores in Los Angeles, and Manson actually tied this couple up, and his family took care of the rest, stabbing them to death and writing "death to pigs" in blood on the refrigerator. How they were caught was not on suspicion of the Tate LaBianca murders, but simply on the belief that the family had vandalized a portion of the Death Valley National Park when they were hiding out in the Mojave Desert. The county sheriff took them into custody, not realizing they were involved in these huge murders, but it was the confession of Susan Akins that cottoned the police on to exactly what the family had been getting up to, and the fact that Charles Manson and his followers were involved in the killings. There were loads of motivations examined over the course of the trial, which began in June of 1970. Manson believed, as most cult leaders do, that he was the new Messiah, and that after a nuclear attack, him and his followers would be saved by hiding out in a secret world under the desert. A race war would result in black victory, and him and his family members would have to mentor the black community as they would lack the experience to run the planet. And the defense relied heavily on this as well. The primary reason they murdered the Biancas was that they took the wallet of Rosemary and then they were gonna put it in a section of LA where a black person might find it. They would use it, the murder would be pinned on them, and a race war would break out. That's why they wrote like pigs and stuff like that on the walls as well, because they were like, oh, they'll think it's the Black Panthers. When asked why they wanted to kill celebrities, Susan Atkins said that the Manson family wanted to commit murders that would shock the world and make people take notice. The original lawyer dropped Manson as a client pretty soon after taking him on, but that move seemed to have cost him his life, because later in the year he went camping and disappeared, and his decomposed body turned up several months later. It's thought that it was a retaliation killing by members of Manson's family. Charles Manson loved the fame that came with all of this, even though he was against fame. This guy is a walking hypocrite. But he released an album when he was like on trial and in prison called Lies. He was trying to raise money for defense. He carved an X into his head during his trial as well, and that would later become modified and modified and modified, and then it became the swastika that we all know and love. Every single member of the Manson family who was on trial was convicted. They were found guilty, and it was this week, 50 years ago, they were sentenced to death. Although those sentences will never come to fruition. They were commuted to life in prison when California got rid of their death penalty in 1972. Charles Manson died in prison in November of 2007, and our 10 minutes is finished. Our 10 minutes is up, and that is all the time I have to tell you about Charles Manson and the family. Please, please, please use all of the research links in the description for everything that I used to put this story together, and some curricular reading for you as well. So much about Charles Manson's history, how he formed the family, what on earth they were doing on a ranch, and all of that sort of stuff is in those links, as well as some recommendations of some films that I watched, like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie. Thank you so much for watching and rocking with my content. I will see you guys next week for another true crime anniversary video. I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching.